Welcome to Grow Overload. I'm Anthony, and AMD has announced a couple things at Computex with FSR and 3D stack chips. So let's just jump right into it. I know AMD announced a few things at Computex, everything from Fidelity Super Resolution FSR to some mobile GPUs to AMD Advantage in their laptops and how they're designing them to APUs. But what I really want to talk about is their 3D stack chips and taking the chiplet where your cores are and then stacking on memory on top of that. Now AMD has shown off, they showed off a 5900 versus a 5900 with the stacked memory on top of it, on top of those chips, and had roughly a 12 to 15% increase in performance on what they showed us. So, and take it with a grain of salt, these are their benchmarks, but that's basically another generational jump that you have right from there by adding that SRAM on top of the chip, which I find really interesting. Now they're using TSVs, and if you want to look into that, there's some articles, and just go research the articles, but I'll keep it short here. They're basically using kind of like a copper bonding to basically connect it into to the CPU part of the chiplet. So you still have the I/O die, and this what is it, about 36 millimeters squared is the memory that sits on top of the CPU part of that, uh, which is a different chiplet from the I/O die. So you still have your same three chiplets in that 5900X. However, now you have memory stacked on top of it. And they ran these tests, clocked at 4 gigahertz. What's interesting to me is that they just put it at 4 gigahertz, which is good, so that we're isolating exactly that it was the memory doing that SRAM that was stacked on top, basically gaining that performance. But one thing I would have liked to see was, is that just as fast as they can go, or can they let it boost and see what the performance difference is as well? That was interesting to me. Is there a limitation there? Now, how they have it stacked, they kind of shaved it off so it can allow to sit underneath the same IHS. So basically, the same coolers and stuff will work as well. There's been some stuff I've seen from Anantech that has said that this is going to be coming out, you know, and later, maybe early next year. If this is the case, that's one more CPU in the AM4 platform that AMD will have, which is a huge benefit if you're on the AM4 platform, especially a 500 series motherboard. And then AMD gets that longevity, that you get that performance boost, and it's another competition point out there as well. Now, one reason why AMD may be bringing this out to desktop is one reason why I would probably do it is before you put it on your server side, right? You can get it out to users and have a user base kind of help test it out to see if there's any corner cases you may have missed, right? Server side processors go through quite a bit of validation, and you kind of don't want that to go down the road of kind of implementing this all, and have a validation issue, which could cause some more delays or some major issues as well in the whole manufacturing process. So starting out a little bit smaller, like in a desktop CPU, is a good movement for them. Now, down in the future, what I could see with this is you put a little bit more stacked memory. I think that you can have up to 4 stacks, TSMC said, because AMD worked closely with TSMC, Taiwanese Semiconductor um, company, to manufacture this, and I think it's up to 4 stacks of memory you can have on it. And I believe that they have currently on the 5900, they had 64 gigs, or 6 gigs. Oh man, that'd be awesome. No, 64 megs per CCD, which, so per core complex. So if you have 2 core complex, that's a 128 plus what's already there. So it's about 196 megs of basically L3 cache overall on this chip. So you can only imagine once you get to server processors, if you start stacking more, let's say you have an APU a little bit more powerful, and now you have your RAM localized right there on the chip, and you don't have to go off to DDR or off chip basically to go and access that memory, which the closer it is, the better processing, the less latency you have. There could be some really big benefits here, especially if you want to put a bigger APU and have more graphics processing power on that APU that AMD could come out with, and now you can play games on there with FSR. As we jump into FSR here with Fidelity FX Super Resolution, you can then, depending upon what you want, is your quality or performance, you can scale differently with the FSR to make your games operate at a higher frame rate of whatever you're trying to target, right? So now let's jump into FSR a little bit more, since I kind of transitioned there anyways with this. This is an interesting technology. I will admit I like to see native resolution. That's just, I can tell a little bit of blurriness difference and stuff. I don't think my eyes are the greatest in the world, but I notice the little things like that when I'm playing a game. Mostly when I play a game, I like to enjoy it, right? That's when I'm playing it. I like to get immersed and enjoy the game. But let's say I, want to play on my APU or these new APUs that could come out one day, we hope. Or, I have an older graphics card because I can't buy one and get a newer one today, right? This is an opportunity that AMD has 4 presets, and this is an open source um, technology that they're creating, which I think is great. I think that this is the way to go, is create an open standard that everyone can use. They even showed it off on a GeForce card here, and maybe Intel will jump into the mix and support it on their graphics cards. It might already be just support native, but if AMD or if Intel also puts their effort behind it, I think that this could be a good technology boost for both AMD and Intel, especially competing with DLSS, right? DLSS is proprietary to NVIDIA, and if, let's say, AMD and Intel were able to compete with this FSR, that would be a good opportunity because then it's support on everything. They showed it off with the GTX 1060 during their keynote at Computex. Now, in this, they have 4 settings from quality to performance. Now, quality still gives you a boost in frame rate. It's not native, so but it's a little bit closer to native than performance is. Performance is if you want higher frame rates. So, depending upon your frame rate that you have your monitor and what you're targeting, you can choose what you want. And this is supposedly going to be for developers that they can just take and implement, and on top of it should be easier than DLSS from rumors. I don't know. I haven't talked to any developers to tell me if it is or isn't, and until I kind of hear that or see reports of it, more concrete, it's going to be kind of hard to tell that. But the big thing is that it's going to be supported across the board, right? The GTX 1060 already supports it, right? AMD cards support it. APUs support it, right? Maybe even they didn't really show anything with Intel graphics at all. But if Intel graphics also supported it, then you got all Intel processors supporting it and getting that. Basically creating it, and one cool thing about this is that it's also making more computers being able to hopefully play games or have games at a playable, let's say, frame rate, I should say. So if this is there, let's say you can't get a graphics card right now, but you got a CPU with a GPU on it, even though it may not be as capable as a dedicated graphics card, you can get into this and start playing some games. And I think that's a huge benefit overall to expanding the ecosystem of gaming and to get people interested in gaming without having the upfront costs, especially right now, of getting a GPU. Um, I just think that there's a huge opportunity here for FSR. I, still have my reservations, just like I do with DLSS, right? If you are want to play a game in native, how is that going to affect things later on? But if you want to turn on ray tracing and still have high frame rates, this is an opportunity that you have to hopefully kind of have the best of both worlds. And overall, does this give them an out of stop innovating on the GPU? I hope not. I hope with Intel coming in and just pushing both NVIDIA and AMD, hopefully to lower price points and more performance, that they will, keep innovating on the GPU and on the technology side of it, right, the hardware side, and still have an FSR where in applications where it makes sense, and maybe it evolves, right? Maybe FSR starts out where you're trying to get higher frame rates, more performance in ray tracing, but then as you get more and more ray traced stuff, you can focus it more and more on just the ray tracing part of it. But only time will tell to see how this progresses over time. And I also have my cautions of how long will NVIDIA, will stick with DLSS, AMD stick with FSR, or does a technology that goes away because nobody supports it? That's a crucial thing too, right? We need AMD to continue to support this. So let's end with the APUs here that AMD announced and a little bit about their laptops. Um, Items. So AMD's announced two APUs for August. Kind of interesting. It's not right away, but it seems like that they're getting a little time here before AMD kind of hopefully for stock issues, and maybe they're seeing by August we'll have a little bit more stock in all of our products that we're manufacturing in 7 nanometer. So maybe that's why they chose it. But I would like to have heard why they chose it. But there's only speculation here on my part on that. And then we have AMD talking a lot about laptops. They came out with their 6800M and 6700M and 6600M laptop cards, and you can get an all AMD laptop now. They're talking about the AMD Advantage, so they got the Smart Shift, they have Smart Access Memory in there, and this AMD Advantage to kind of be able to tweak, and they have certain requirements that they're trying to hit with these laptops, battery life, temperatures. It's almost kind of a little bit what Intel does. And while NVIDIA can do some of the same things and they have some of the same programs, you have to get the manufacturer to really buy into it, and you have to kind of be able to do it differently because they don't have the communication with like an Intel processor and AMD processor, right? They don't have that complete stack. Whereas Intel, and by the way, I think Intel's going to do this as well, right? It only makes sense, right? Why is Intel coming out with GPUs to kind of hopefully push NVIDIA out of their laptops, right? That's what they want. You have that problem. So NVIDIA is going to, I think NVIDIA is going to have to slightly change tactics or come up with more performant cards than what everybody else has, and just be like, hey, you want the best performance, you got to come here. And so we'll see how the AMD Advantage laptops really kind of take off. But they're taking a leaf out of Intel's book to kind of how, hey, we have a platform here, kind of like Ultrabook. Here's your guidelines, and here's what you like to abide by. So I think it's all good things on AMD there. They had a really upbeat and kind of. I thought their keynote was really good, right? It was interesting. It was to the point. It wasn't trying to go through and do a whole bunch of other stuff. I still have to look at Nvidia's. We'll see if I do it. They just released some more cards, which, yeah, fine. I mean, can I buy the cards? That's really what it comes down to here is can I buy the cards for the Nvidia side thing. I know Intel, I heard Intel's keynote was, I think they had theirs. I heard Intel did something boring, which means I'll look at it and we'll see if I do a video on it. But I think that hopefully with all the competition coming out, with AMD talking about 3D stacking, with what Intel is trying to come up with GPUs, that things start pushing forward and keep on moving forward, especially for consumers. I I hope that we start getting out of the stock issue at some point, right? Mining has took a dip right now, and depending upon how you're mining and stuff, that could determine if we have some. But there's still a lot of pent up demand. Still going to take I think, a little bit of while for everything to iron itself out. And so we'll see what happens. I could say in 2 months, well, it could be better, but in 2 months, the cryptocurrency market could go through the roof again, and we could be back in the same position. Or you have another supply constraint thing, or let's say it's still a drought in Taiwan and it's hard to get water supply, etc. There's a lot of factors out there that could happen. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I am going to be recording that solar video, just kind of like what I went through here fairly soon, maybe today or tomorrow, and then I will be hopefully start doing some more unboxing, get some more testing done. There's a lot of stuff I want to do here and bring you more content hopefully as well, but I did want to touch on this AMD stuff Let me know what your thoughts are on AMD and the 3D stacking, the FSR, in the comments below. I do have my reservations about FSR, just on, how technologies go through cycles and how some of them have gone bye-bye, and I do like native resolution, right? So those are my things that I have reservations about. But if it helps more people get into gaming and be able to game at a frame rate and quality that they like, I think this could be a huge benefit as well. So with that, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for taking the time to help support Gray Overload and helping this channel grow. I really appreciate it. Until next time, God bless, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.